How's it going, everyone? This is the tutorial for the Netbeans Java Learning Palette. The section is on loops. There are 4 different loop items. The do while and while, which are essentially the same thing. It just they function the same way. It's just the differences of do and do while, which is when the condition is checked. Then there's the for loop and for each. Just to go over the do while and while, just like everything that uses a condition in this palette, it works best if you have variables already in your program, so we're just going to make them real quick. And then you save so that it will populate the list inside the items. So we're going to drag the do while item in, and it's very simple. You just put a comment and your condition, and then it populates it. Generates it, rather. So check for x is less than y, and then we'll just generate that. So then you can do whatever you want inside the loop. So we will just print out x and increment x, and then we should get 11 values of x printed out. Yep, so we got 11 values printed out. And using the while loop is essentially the same thing. Drag it in, put your comment, build your expression. We'll do x is less than y. Generate the code, and you can do whatever you want again. Just run it to make sure that the code's not broken, and it runs. The one item that is slightly more complicated than these would be the for loop, because you have to initialize values inside the for loop. And I'll demonstrate that now. So I've erased everything, I saved it, put the for loop in the code. You have to select, there's a lot of combo boxes, but it's pretty intuitive, and I'll demonstrate it now just to make sure. The first one is the data type. Generally we choose integers. And then you select your variable name. If you have an uninitialized variable in your code, you can pick it from here. But I'll just call it I. Just make one right here. We generally start with equals and then 0. This could also be a variable if you want to start it from something else. And then your next portion is you're checking I against something. This is your condition. So we'll put I is less than 10. Again, you could put a variable there as well. And then you choose if you want to increment or decrement I. I'm going to increment it. You hit OK, it builds the for loop, and then you can just print out I. And then it prints out all the values. So that's not so bad. I would say the most complicated item in this tab would be the for each loop, because what this does is it loops through elements generally of an array. So if we create an array and we initialize it with, say, 5 values, from this array we can generate a for each loop. So we put it in here. Obligatory comment as always, just to prove that it works. Our array is an integer array, so you want to choose the data type that matches what you're trying to scan through. So choose an integer. If you have an uninitialized value of the same type, you can select it here, but I would recommend just initializing your own. We'll call it element. And you want to select for this one, on the right side of the colon, what you're scanning through. In this case, it's the array called array. Oh, and actually, you always have to save your program for those lists to populate. I'm glad that happened because I'm sure someone will run into that problem and not know why they can't see their variables. That's why. So we're going to again do this. Now with the drop down, you'll see that array is populated. That's because we saved the program. You have to save, otherwise these lists won't populate. That's a little bit of a bug, I guess, but I couldn't find a workaround for it, and it's not that big of an issue. So for this, the body is left intact for this, just because it's pretty simple. Generally, when you do a for each loop, you know exactly what you want to do. So we'll just print out each element, which will give us each element inside the index of the array. And then this code is runnable right off the bat, and it prints out every element in the array. And if you change these values to anything you want, it will still function. Yep. So that's it for the loop tab of the Java Learning Palette. Hope that helps.